Welcome to this AIOC organized symposium on the presbyopia correcting IOLs. This is a topic which is dear to many of us as the lifestyle all over the world is changing and the demand has increased to have the less dependence or freedom from glasses. And therefore, we are very fortunate that various technologies, various industry-driven companies are really offering us various options to the clinician, and also patient has a happy situation to select appropriate IOL for their lifestyle and suiting them. I'm very happy to let you know that we have very experienced faculty here. Arup is going to tell us about his journey, and Arup is a prolific surgeon and a senior consultant, but the best thing was that he is the first Indian to win a grand prize on a video competition way back in 2010 in ASCRS, and since then I am the president of his fans club. Abhijit is also a very experienced surgeon in cataract and oculoplasty, and has been doing it for more than 25 years in Mumbai. And I know him personally, and I've learned a lot of good pearls from him. Shauril is actually the misfit here because he's a biomedical engineer and he decided to be in a marketing role in a company called Alcon. So Shauril, we are looking forward for your very useful tips for us, because we are very ignorant about how to put it into practice and adapt. And we have kept the best at the end. Michael Lawless, I don't need to introduce him all the biodatas, but he has been a pioneer in refractive surgery in general, but also in the cataract frontier, and he is a great teacher. If I have to say one line, he is one of the best teachers I have been. I've learned so very much from him. So Michael, please stay all along and contribute. We are looking forward. So we start with our first presentation. Arup, would you please take over now?
Is my slide visible?
Yeah.
It's my great privilege to be part of this session, and thanks to Alcon India. And my topic is looking back at my presbyopic correcting IOL. I have no financial interest to disclose. Concept of multifocal IOL was started in early 80s. Dr. Hofer realized that one of myopic patient having decentered lens able to focus through pseudophakic area as well as aphakic area of the pupil, and he using the aphakic area for neon and pseudophakic area for the distance. Then the first multifocal IOL is conceptualized by the fusion of two optics of 18 diopter and 21 diopter. And since then, the journey started, and we eventually, now we, at present, so far we at this diffractive multifocal IOL or diffractive design of IOL. So way back to almost 16 years back, Alcon introduced in Restore Plus 4 in the market, and it has a plus 3.2 diopter at the corneal spectacle plane, and it has a focusing area was the 33 centimeter. And subsequently, subsequent years, they launched +3 restore, and which is have a focal length of 45 centimeter, and +2.5 having a near point focal point as 53. It was understood, and with the constant update from the clinician and the surgeon, that the only one near point will not satisfy all patients, because different task was done in a different distance, and moreover, it is grossly depend on the patient's habit and his arm or her arm length. Most comfortable intermediate task was done was one arm distance, which varies from patient to patient. Demanding meeting of the innovation ophthalmic industry, able to launch the first trifocal IOL way back 2010 in the market to address the intermediate requirement as well as the near requirement. And PanOptix was launched in 2015, and its toric version is launched in 2017. The trifocal toric IOL toric IOL were launched in the market as astigmatism grossly affect the outcome of the surgery. Study proves the 0.5 of the cylinder grossly affect the outcome of vision. Probably most unexpected result of this so far in all kind of diffractive IOL, and especially PanOptix IOL, probably due to the wrong assessment of the corneal astigmatism, or maybe the underestimating the posterior corneal astigmatism. The PanOptix is an advanced trifocal IOL. It has a aspheric anterior diffractive surface. It has an intermediate focal point in 62, and a near point is 42 centimeter with plus 3.25. It has a 4.5 diffractive optical zone. And let's the difference between the restore and the which is called as a nowadays is called bifocal IOL, and the PanOptix considered as a progressive IOL or trifocal IOL. This a diffractive zone is different. It is 3.6 to 4.5. It has a PanOptix has a 15 steps and 2 focal point at plus 3.
I'm so sorry to interrupt, but seems like there is no audio. Is that the case only for me or for all?
There's no audio, neither there's a video.
There's no audio. Yeah, that's right. There's no audio from Dr. Bomig. Good interrupted.
Sir, you're on mute.
The
Dr. Bomig,
slides are not moving. I mean, it's all frozen. No audio and no, you know.
So
Dr.
that's
Bomig, you're on mute, and I guess there must be an internet issue at your end.
Okay.
Yeah, keep sharing, yeah.
It's a power failure.
Right. Okay.
No issues, sir.
I
You
can see there's
continue.
a
We can see your screen.
yeah, there's a difference in the restore and the PanOptix design. The central zone is a 0.85 to 1.16, and diffractive structure sends the energy beautifully, intelligently into two different foci, and in a large and small as well as the large pupil. The diffractive zone size matters as it is intelligently kept is a 4.5. Design is less dependent on pupil size on the different lighting condition. If it is smaller, it compromises the near or intermediate performance in the low light or in the large pupil patient. Larger, it compromises the distance vision in the myopic patient. So in Indian scenario, most of the we have a little bit of mild smaller pupil. We don't have any problem in the even in the smaller diffractive zone, but still we comfortably implant this panoptics IOL in the younger group of patients. You see that the diffractive technology comparison compared to the traditional trifocal, it has a 2 focal length, and if panoptics is actually a quadrifocal lens, it has a 3-step. And intelligently, the third step is actually carved to the baseline so that it transmits the more energy towards the distance. You can see this the graph. If you add it is for the near, this is one ad and the second ad, and if you consider the ad is a y and it is a for intermediate is a half of the y. That means it if able to focus in the near vision if trifocal lens focus in the 40 centimeter, and it will for the intermediate distance is 80 centimeter. It's designed, they actually intelligently divide this. This skip the y is as equal to 2/3 of a y and 1/3 of a y. That means if you able to focus near point is a 40 centimeter, 2/3 of y with the intermediate distance is a 60 centimeter, and this is they focus the light. Panoptics light is a 1/27, but this is actually unnecessary. This is a most elongated intermediate focal length, and this they make this 120 towards the distance, and they transmit more light for the distance, almost 88% of the light in the 3 millimeter pupil. And if you could see the defocus curve that this panoptics lens, it can do, if you consider 20 by 25, I consider all the vision for the multifocal, the benchmark is a 20 by 25. It is more than 6 by 9 vision. Actually, it able to focus up to +3, and it's a beautifully focusing the light in from the almost 40 centimeter to almost 70 centimeter. And if you see the through the MTF curve MTF curve and comparison with all the trifocal lens, and you can see that panoptics lens is a clear winner. So at summary, it transmits 88% of light in 3 millimeter pupil, allocate half light to the distance and rest of the light for the near and intermediate. And if you see this 550 nanometer wavelength, it is almost 2.5 to 3.5 millimeter of pupil. It's able to transmit almost 82 to 88% light light through the 3 millimeter pupil. So in summary, panoptics is a very innovative quadrifocal design and 4.5 and optimize near and intermediate vision 40 to 80 centimeter. Almost is a continuous vision, and the enhanced light energy technology provide 18% in the 3 millimeter, which is much higher than the other traditional multifocal eye. Just looking at the literature review, that is a this is a clinical study by Dr. Ramamurthy and Avavasavada. You can see this the result is I keep always my benchmark is a 20 by 25. You can see the distant corrected intermediate visions is almost 88%, and distant corrected near vision is almost 8%. So near vision or intermediate vision is pretty good, and if you see the uncorrected vision, the near vision is 88%, and it is almost 89%. And binocular best corrected at 4 millimeter pupil, you can see this. If you see the 0.2 logmar, it is almost 100% and 97%. So it is the study. It is pretty well that this lens is basically able to focus all light from 40 to 80 centimeter light is very clearly. And if you see the composite visual acuity, if it is logma is less than 0.2, it is almost corrected is almost 90%, and uncorrected is 85%. And you can see the defocus curve, it is continuously focused from 80 centimeter to 40 centimeter. And it is the subjective system questionnaire. Only one patient is dissatisfied out of the 67%. So I going to all the literature, and this is a paper by Dr. Michael Lawless. You can see this is seen this the near vision is slightly in his study is better than the intermediate vision, which is slightly different from the study of Dr. Abhay Vasavada and Ramamurthy. But both the cases is almost it is 90% and 100%. So all literature you see showing the panoptics IOL is doing very good in terms of focusing light in a near and intermediate vision. In my experience, so far I implanted 87 panoptics IOL, and bilateral implantation is 38. Follow-up, I did the day 1, day 7, 1 month and 3 months. I saw the similar result, and so the extremely happy good patient in these panoptic groups. And criteria for patient selection, as we was used to select the patient for the all type of multifocal patient. We used to exclude the very critical patient, the patient of night driving, habit of night driving, like to wear specs, and very need very sharp vision for the near. And obviously exclude the all kind of ocular pathology. But in this particular lens, I am not very critical for selecting IOL, panoptics IOL, even in very critical patient. And biometric consideration is a very important, and today's I think the success of the all kind of premium lens lies in the biometry. We are able to access the optical biometry and the all advanced formula, which is almost give the accurate result. And my astigmatism benchmark is ATR is less than 0.7. And today, even is after TK total keratometry, I able to understand how much the patient in post-operative astigmatism. So understand better how much the post-operative astigmatism will be. So today's success of the panoptics is as the IOL is good enough, and the biometry formula and biometry machine also very important. And with the surface technology, we are able to do the biometry even in a very advanced cataract. So I generally see the three kind of patient: asking for spectacle freedom, asking for best IOL, and indifferent, no knowledge about IOL. But they asking from the spectacles freedom, these patients are basically very critical. You have to spend little more time for this patient. Asking for the best IOL, probably the best suitable candidate for the IOL. What I offer, I always offer spectacles freedom for intermediate distance, spectacle freedom for reading tab, reduce the spectacle dependency for near in place of book reading, and you may need glass. I told may need glass for regarding the long reading in a long hour. My experience versus EDOF lens, which is basically in my practice, distance vision is equal. Near vision panoptics is far ahead in EDOF. Intermediate vision is almost equal. Continuous vision panoptics is much more ahead in any kind of EDOF lens, and astigmatism tolerance probably EDOF has a more tolerance level, and stereo acuity is almost same. Monovision is a EDOF. We have to do monovision in compromise a distance vision. So I kept my EDOF practice in cases of myopic patient. We don't mind to little bit of my post-operative myopia. So nowadays my 90% patient of the presbyopic correcting IOL is a panoptics. So far, my presbyopic correcting boards momentum after panoptics was linked. Changing my approach. Previously, I was very exclusive. I have a very stringent inclusion criteria for presbyopic correcting IOL, but now it is I am become the more inclusive and I am changing my mindset, inclusive mindset to prescribe the prescribed corrected lens. Thank you so much for your kind delivery. I am very
Thank you,
sorry
Arup.
for that technical problem.
Thank you, Arup. Thank you very much. I think I would value one comment from Abhijit first and then Michael on their experience over the years of different presbyopia correcting IOLs and why the choice is today PanOptics for them. Abhijit, you start. One comment, please.
When Restore was in picture, I always had a problem explaining to the patient about which distance would be corrected and which distance wouldn't be corrected. And we used to tell the patients that, okay, maybe around 90% of your activities would be without glasses, and 10% you will require glasses. But with PanOptics, that has come down to like 99% activities without glasses, maybe 1% you will require glasses. So my flexibility to counsel and to explain to the patients is way better. And the convincing power and the conviction with which I can explain to the patient is better. So my confidence automatically shows over and my conversions improve.
Excellent. I think that's what Arup tried to say, that your chair time is actually reduced. He's ready to accept those fastidious patients as well. And that you brought it out very well. You don't need to keep any tension about it when the patients you're counseling pre-operatively or when they come back on the first day. You don't have to look at the body language. You are very confident that they will not have those faces that you have seen earlier with previous bifocals and other multifocal lenses. Michael, what's your take on the change now over the years?
Well, I think the critical thing about trifocals, and I've had a lot of experience with PanOptics and the Zeiss trifocal, I think they're both good, is that there's nothing else. No other lens out there can give you the same near certainty of spectacle independence. If that's what a patient wants, and if you give it to them, they will tolerate some annoying features such as photic phenomenon or a process of neuroadaptation, which may take time, but they've got to have spectacle independence to be happy. And no other lens design can give me that confidence.
Yeah, I think I can't agree more. And what I also notice, as you all have, is as it's mentioned, continuous smooth transition from near to intermediate to distance is much better than all the other previous IOLs. Only thing is that we need to be very careful about targeting our refractive outcome. And if it is off more than half a diopter in astigmatism or in a sphere, you need to match the other eye appropriately so that at the end of the day, both eyes perform very well. So we need to be very thorough and very precise in the measurement, as Arup already alluded to it. Any other comments that any of you want to make it before we move to the next one? I think to me, PanOptics has changed my incidence of multifocal. I'm a very timid person, and I was less than 10% when they had Restore. It increased a little bit with 2.5 add because it was giving a great distance clarity and intermediate. And now PanOptics has gone more than 25% of my patients receive PanOptics. So that is something I find it with less stress, no counseling, very little counseling, and it achieves that aim very well. So I think now we move on to the actual clinical scenario, and there's no better person than Abhijit to discuss some clinical scenarios with us. Abhijit?
Yes, thank you, sir. Thank you, Alcon. Thank you, AIOC, for having me here. So what we need to do is we need to understand the needs and expectations of the patient. And at the same time, we are also setting the expectations. So there's going to be an overlap with Dr. Baumik. So the potential candidate is who is having multiple activities at different distances, wants spectacle independence, has a positive demeanor, Usually qualify for bilateral implants, no previous refractive surgery, especially when you're a beginner with presbyopic correcting IOLs, and understands technology versus God-given. So that is something that I actually put into their head when they come to me. May not be ideal are the patients who enjoy wearing glasses and not opposed to wearing glasses, impatient or type A personalities, pre-existing eye pathologies, and all those things that Dr. Arup Bhaumik has already talked about. But I would add to it poor endothelial cell counts, especially guttate changes, irregular cylinder, and dry eyes. Yeah, definitely. We do have a lifestyle questionnaire in our OPD, and we try to find out patients who are on antidepressants or antipsychotics, which would be a clear no-no. I especially take inputs from my staff, the optoms, as the personalities who are hard to please. And these kind of personalities actually affect the adaptation, the neuroadaptability that happens over a period of time. This is a rough flowchart that we follow. But essentially, counseling is the key. And we need to understand the needs and expectations, and we need to understand what activity the patient values the most. We aim for plano. The present where progressive makes it easier for us to counsel. If the person is on progressive, definitely understands the technology. And we talk about work or play as well. So with the newer generation of corporate people coming up, there are a lot of people who are working, playing cards and other things. So we need to look into that as well. So we explain all possible outcomes. We have a chair time, but that's with the optoms. I don't spend the chair time with the counseling. We explain technology, not the cost. We promise the patients that they will not require glasses for 99% activities and may require a minor spectacle power occasionally. And we always take an informed consent once they have chosen the lens that they have been given. And we also talk about, we instill confidence in the lens. So rather than talking about halos and glare or rave about them, we set realistic expectations for the patient that this is what you're going to get and this is the light that you're going to be working about. So we need to know whether how many times are you going to be in pitch dark, or you're going to be driving on pitch dark roads in the rural areas, not on highways. So we talk about halos, but don't rave about them, and we underplay them. And we always tell them that most of you will see, and if you accept it, only then go ahead with the multifocals. And we have valuable educational resources for them. So we always underpromise and overdeliver. We have a extremely diligent pre-op workup, which includes dry eye workup. We preferably do a topography for all our patients. And we do, I operate on the Varion, so definitely a planning station would be good, but there's no harm in using the Barrett online toric calculator, and always use the toric calculator so that you correct the astigmatism, however low it may be. So, and that trade-off is worth the trouble, because that astigmatism is the one which gives you the wow factor. So the acid test is to check the company claims and actually use them. So I have put up the scenarios in which I have used the patient. The photographs are not of the actual patients. So we have a 40-year-old bilateral PSC, a software professional. The right eye was operated for restore with plus 2.5, and he was extremely unhappy because for some reason he was not even able to see the computer very clearly with the plus 2.5. And he had halos and glare. Near vision also, he was not very happy. Not very happy with intermediate. He came after 2 years for the left eye surgery with a mature cataract. Fortunately, we usually do a bilateral biometry. So we had biometry readings for his other eye also. So he was ready for a +3, in fact. But at that time, I had just started using Panoptics and I was very confident about it. And we was counseled for Panoptics. And this was his reaction on the day 1 of surgery, because he had not seen that well for ages, and he could exactly see the shade of the brand new car, and he was very happy with his near and intermediate work right from day 1. This is the second case scenario, a moderate myopia, which I would actually be very hesitant to advise multifocals. So nuclear sclerosis, PSC, and he had glare and halo as a complaint with the cataract. Very demanding, and was explained and counseled about panoptics, and was operated on both eyes 1 week apart. And he's, even after a 6-month follow-up, extremely satisfied, and he happily drives at night as well. But that's urban driving. This is a 50-year-old gynecologist.
Hello, Abhijit.
Yeah.
Let's put a halt for a little bit of comments on the case that you described.
Yeah.
Arup, Michael, do you have any other comments? Would you have managed a little differently, or any other thing that you want to bring it out from the two cases that Abhijit described just now?
Look, I think the first case is a 40-year-old patient, and he's got plenty of accommodation, and that's why he wasn't happy with the Restore 2.5. It's just not going to give good enough near and even intermediate compared to a 40-year-old with accommodation. And you hit the nail by giving him a Panoptics, and he was coming from a bad place. His lens was white, and so he had a phenomenal improvement, and he got the near vision you get with a Panoptics. So I think that was a great case to demonstrate how well it can do. And a 40-year-old is very different to a 60-year-old in terms of their expectations of their vision. Your second case, I wasn't sure what you meant by moderate myope. I still worry about a trifocal in a -2, -3 patient. In a -5 or a -6 or a -7 or a -10, I have no problem. I think they do great. But I think the -3s, I still get a little twitchy about.
Yeah, so he was wearing a 1 eye -2 and a 1 eye -3.
Well, yeah.
So that's something. Why you worry, Michael, with the Panoptics?
I think because they've spent their life with terrific -3 near vision at a really good working range. And it's hard to compete with that. I mean, Panoptics does it, but it's tricky for them to turn off their brain and say, okay, that's where I was and this is where I am now. You can get away with it, but I think that's one of the few type of patients where I get a little twitchy.
I think this is very important that Michael brought it out. Please keep in mind the refractive history and what they've done and how they were happy. And you can discuss that with patient if in doubt. But be careful in this myopia from -1 over up to -3 or so. So, Arup, do you have any comments on these cases?
I'm absolutely agree to this, what Dr. Paulus told. This is a low myopia is the most dangerous patient. They become very difficult to satisfy with the multifocal lens, because they used to see the near vision without glass. And in high myopia, even in presbyopic age, I saw that used to have the presbyopic lenses, progressive lenses. So in high myopia, I find extremely good in cases of Panoptics can work very good, but low myopia should very careful to selecting patient. You have to explain everything, but in the same time, I never mind to select EDOF lens in cases of low myopia also.
Okay.
Panoptics vis-a-vis EDOF.
Yeah. Okay. Let's move on, Abhijit.
Yeah. So this is a gynecologist who does laparoscopic surgery, plays golf, and he was counseled for Panoptics again, and he's extremely happy to be independent of glasses for his work as well. So seamless transition for different distances. That's what he has explained. He's described how he is seeing it, because these are the patients whom I can actually ask what they are experiencing.
So I think this is the case where golf will involve distance and intermediate, and also the laparoscopy vision. This is a very good example where the patient is very satisfied with Panoptics, and knowing the function of Panoptics, it is quite expected that they will perform well on those activities. Any comments on these golfers and other these surgeons? Both of you, Michael and Arup, anything?
Well, I've operated on one ophthalmologist and put Panoptics in, and he was very happy, and I could talk to him as a colleague and as a friend, and his He said the quality of the vision down the operating microscope was just normal. He had some halos around lights at night, but in terms of clearness of vision and being able to do his work as a microsurgeon, it was fine. He had no problem at all. So I think
That's
these
interesting.
trifocals are compatible with very good clear vision.
I think that the quality of distance vision is not compromised very much, and therefore through the microscopes and with that intermediate, they are happy as a surgeon, as a golfer, and so on. So I think PanOptics is changing and expanding our net for putting these lenses. Okay, go ahead, please, Abhijit.
So this was a doctor's father, and he's an accounting and trekking both. And unfortunately, he had a faint corneal opacity in one eye and was operated with a actress of toric monofocal. So when he came for the other eye, we had asked him that whether do you want to opt for a PanOptics, and he was fine with it. And post-op, he was 20/20 and N6, but absolutely no issues adjusting binocularly, no halos or glare, and he's around 70, so he's very happy, no complaints.
Now, would you have put other multifocal before, if this patient was before the
No,
PanOptics era?
No, I wouldn't have.
No. Okay. Any comments? Aruk, Michael?
So I never tried planning or PanOptics in one eye, other eye is a monofocal lens. But I saw this patient. I have did surgery PanOptics, and the patient was operated other place. And as I mentioned in my presentation, there's two kind of patient. One kind of base lens, and he even there in that clinic they asked for the base lens. They implanted IQ lens. So after he came to me, and he was happy. He was happy, not complaining about anything. So he had a right eye has a IQ and left eye is a PanOptics. So, but I never tried the inocular PanOptics or planning for that.
I think you can get into trouble with a monofocal in one eye and a PanOptics in the other eye. If they focus on the clearness of the monofocal eye and feel that the quality is degraded in the PanOptics eye, and it's not quite as the same, there's a different quality of vision. If they focus on that and they're not warned about it, I think you can get into trouble. And maybe because of the corneal opacity in the monofocal eye here, so the clearness was perhaps degraded somewhat, so that wasn't such an issue. But I think mixing and matching with a monofocal and a PanOptics, it can be a little difficult with some patients, I think.
I think that's where, if the surgeon is enthusiastic and patient understand, preoperative counseling and telling him not to compare each eye separately, because that's the common habit. Second eye they do and they compare, it's not as good as the first eye, and they look at the light bulbs and things which they never looked at earlier. So I think we need to educate them if they ask for it. I would not suggest PanOptics straight away, but if I find that a patient is wanting and he would welcome this less dependence on glasses, I would certainly consider it in the monofocal in one eye, having had the good counseling and selecting the right kind of person.
So would you opt for a EDOF instead of a PanOptics in such cases?
I don't have much experience of EDOF, I must say that. I'm looking forward for the new lens, which Michael is going to talk about, but I really have not had mixed match with EDOF and PanOptics. I'm a bit, I don't have enough experience, to be honest. Okay, let's go ahead. Next one. Abhijit. Yeah.
So this was a 31-year-old patient with a unilateral PSC and steroid-induced cataract, and was counseled and operated with PanOptic toric and flax, again 6/6 and 6 for intermediate. But for my sake, I asked him whether he finds a difference in the vision between the two eyes, because it's a young guy. So this was one person who told me that I don't find any difference between the colors and the details. In fact, the operated eye is much better. So maybe I got off, maybe because that was the dominant eye and that was the non-dominant eye, maybe.
Yeah, that's as Michael brought it out. We expect them to find a difference, although they will be happy to accept that because they're motivated, with the advantage of panoptics. So, but if you ask them, maybe they would. But as long as they accept it and they're happy, that's what matters. So it seems that one eye phakic or monofocal, with the right selection of the patients and education, it is possible to consider panoptics, but you need to be cautious about it. Okay, let's move on.
So the main bane of the multifocals is the halos and glare. So in our practice, we explain everything. We show them the glare halos, but we prepare them mentally to face them and not be scared of them. So all are counseled that they are there, but they will not impede their judgment in any way. So even if you're seeing halos, you will be able to drive even if it's at night. And maybe if you're having
sorry to interrupt you, sir, but the time is up. So probably
this is my last slide.
In next 30 seconds. Sure.
Yeah. So we also tell them that the best way to lessen the glare and halos is to switch on the cabin light when you're driving, and the other way is to overlook them and underplay them. So this was a small study, but none of my patients actually really complain of halos once they have been counseled well. So unless you ask them, definitely they'll tell you that they do see him. To summarize, it gives a seamless near to intermediate vision, and we have significantly lesser complaints from patients with panoptics with relation to glare, halos, or intermediate vision. And it has become my go-to lens, especially with the 88% plus light transmission and lesser drop in contrast and better color saturation. Thank you.
Yeah, it's nice to know that they perform well, but has less of this photopsia, although they have it, but that's something which is not a bother to the patient. So that's a change panoptics has brought compared to the previous other generation of multifocals. Okay, I think we can take one comment from the panelists. Arup or Michael, anything that you want to summarize?
Sorry. Yeah, look, I think there's a really good example of a whole bunch of cases in the real world where it works. The lens does what it says it's going to do, as long as you get everything right. But that counseling matters a lot. And that old saying that counseling beforehand is a conversation and talking post-surgery is managing a problem. So more talk before, less talk after is my...
And no promise. Be careful. Okay. Thank you so very much, Abhijit. Thank you.
Sir, can I just leave for 15 minutes and rejoin?
Yeah, please try to rejoin as early as you can. Thank you so much.
Thank you so much.
And wonderful presentation. We learned a lot. Thank you. Okay, Shaurav?
Yes, sir.
Move on, please. Yes. This is up to 1:30.
Is my screen visible, sir?
Yes.
Perfectly fine. Good afternoon, everybody. And at the outset, I would like to thank AIOC for giving me the opportunity to speak to you. Just like many, I too also have been from the rigid lens era. And, as I look back, and I think, there has never been more challengingly interesting situation than the multifocal IOL practice, the adoption part of it. And what I'm going to do in the next 15 minutes is, going to give you some tips and approaches that will better help you build the PCIOL practice in your place. So a little stats that before we go forward, something which was very enlightening. The overall adoption of the PCIOLs or ATIOLs across APEC happens to be very low, and especially very low in India. You can see that as low as 1.2%. Australia happens to be very high, of course, but APEC, of course, for that matter, happens to be very low. And then we decided to do a little patient survey, and there was something very interesting, and it's important for all of us know also what came out from this patient survey that we did over 2 years back. And we found out, this was a multi-center and double-blinded survey that we did. We found out that only 8.5% of eligible patients receive an advanced technology, which is toric or for that matter, multifocal. And when we asked, what came out was 82% were actually interested, if they were given an option. Now you would say that, interest is one part of it. What about the payment part of it? Would they be interested? You'll be surprised. 94% when they were interviewed were ready to pay more for if they were offered. Now again, you would say that this might be a epic data of the Singapores and the Shanghais and the Hong Kongs of the world. What about India? And this is what came out from the India study. 7 out of 10 patients are willing to pay as much as 50,000 rupees. That's the bare minimum for a cataract procedure. And this was the saddest part of it. Only 2 out of 10 patients that actually offered a particular a premium lens or a multifocal lens for that matter.
Saurav, could you translate into dollars so that Michael understand?
Okay.
The reality of life.
Right. Roughly.
About $700?
Yes, $750, yes, $750.
700, Michael, $700 US is the maximum they will be paying, 7 out of 10 patients say for a procedure.
Right.
Right.
So clearly there is a gap, as you can see, there is a gap. There's definitely a gap, in what patients want and what we are actually offering. And this is what, this is in the next couple of minutes, I'm going to help you, bridge that gap, a couple of very tiny things that, all of you can do in your practice so that this particular adoption happens very quickly. So here are my 10 tips, for adopting a better way of adopting the PCILs in your practice. All right, here are again, a couple of top, and I bet this is going to be very interesting. The top 4 apprehensions or the incorrect approaches, by many practitioners when they deal with multifocal. I'll just read them out verbatim, and I guess, many of you will be able to recognize with them. The first one happens to be, if and when patients ask for a multifocal lens, I'll not offer them proactively, only if they ask. That's number 1. Second, I cannot increase my chair time for the sake of promoting a lens package. The third happens to be, only affluent class of patients would be interested in a multifocal package. I don't think so this guy can afford one. And the last one happens to be one of my favorites, and many will acknowledge this, is that if I offer a PCIL package to a patient, the patient will run away, will flee, thinking that this is a very pricey place and I might lose off with the surgical patient. Let me play it safe and we go with monofocals. So I'm going to address a few of them, how these are incorrect approaches, and you can probably better come out with these apprehensions. But a big disclaimer over here happens to be the self-conviction of a technology is very important. If you're not convinced about a technology, it'll never show up in your body language and in your staff's body language as well. So I think forums like this are very helpful for everybody to get convinced about a particular technology. The first tip and the first thing is let your patients know. In the entire patient journey that I've described in this slide, the patients walk from one place to another, and there are several opportunities where you can educate the patients about multifocals or any service for that matter. Not only posters and literatures, of course, posters and literatures are important reading materials. I'll just give an example. For example, an optometrist, when he or she is examining the patient, just after the examination, can put a word, Mr. Patel, your eyes are very healthy. You might be a very good candidate for a multifocal lens. My doctor is going to talk more about this. That's about it. And the patient he's already preconditioned, and that's in the entire journey, he gets that feed and then he moves forward. Likewise, there are several opportunities they can do. Several, these days, today in India, the Paytm and the Google Pay and the Phone Pay, there are close to 750 million users in India, which means that many people or the patients or caregivers who know how to use and how to scan a QR code. So QR code based education is very simple to make. You just convert your patient education contents into QR code and place it over there. The materials that the companies give you, the posters and literatures, do not just keep it as it is. Strategically designed places, just not the place where there was a vacant wall and you keep it. These are important resources for you, which will really help build a practice. The next one I'm going to talk is a very interesting thing. But before that, I just want to share a small slide which talks about the patient journey. The patient journey or the education happens much before the consultation. The time between the symptom and the diagnosis is also a very important period for a patient to learn about. And this is where the importance of pre-read material. This is not a very in thing in India, and Dr. Michael Lawless later, I'll ask him. It is quite a familiar thing in other countries. But it's time that we all gear up, sending patients through WhatsApp, simple PDF materials, before they reach, on a schedule appointment before they come. They might not read everything, but even if they read something and they come back, the entire conversation will be much more different as we move forward. So that's something that you can easily do. A real biggest game-changing tool that Dr. Abhijit Desai also spoke about it, and it is very simple. It's just having one lifestyle questionnaire before the consultation. That's my tip number 2. A lifestyle questionnaire is nothing but just a collection of 6 questions where the patients are just asked, are meant to write actually, that what are the things that they want to get rid of spectacle, what are the things that they would be happier about. What happens is psychologically is they start thinking. They would have never thought that a life without spectacles was even possible, but once they tick this, they start thinking, oh, this is also possible. And also it makes life easier for the consultant and the counselors because of the fact that, now they can say that, the conversation picks up from the fact that, as you said that, you wanted to get rid of spectacles and you want to do ABCD things, here is something. So the conversation line totally changes. And by the way, my humble suggestion to all of you would be never undermine the need of spectacle independence from a patient. It could be very vackier than you could have even imagined. As wacky as somebody wants to get rid of the spectacles just because there was a nose marks, he wanted to get rid of the nose marks. Or somebody, I learned this from ophthalmologist that a patient wanted to get rid of spectacles because he loved playing cards and bridge. And he says that every time he holds the cards, the reflection of the cards is seen by somebody else, and he cheats upon me. So that could be as weird as that. Somebody wants in retirement time, a patient wants to, the switches over to health, fitness, and spiritualism. They want to do it to marathons, and that becomes a hurdle if they have a specs and other thing. So do not undermine their reasons for getting rid of spectacles, and hence the importance of giving a chair time. In the initial days, your chair time is actually the investment that you make. It's not spending, it's the investment. And nobody can supplement their chair time. So your personal chair time is important. Use the tools and resources that is there, or you could just scribble around in a pen and paper, and eventually your staff will go ahead and adopt it. But you should always end your conversation making a recommendation, and recommendation is very important. A recommendation from a surgeon is one of the most critical things. Several tools that are available, you can just make a recommendation using a pad saying that this is something that I recommend. However, my counselor is going to talk more about this. Now, typically, I'll just give in a format of what recommendation typically would sound like, as again, something if you feel is like selling or, or sounding, this is what it is. You would want to, and I'll read out verbatim, based on your visual needs and your eagerness to get minimally dependent glasses, I would recommend a multifocal implant. However, whatever you choose, me and my team will do the best. Likewise, Mr. Das, for your father's visual needs, had I been in your position, I would have opted for a multifocal package. However, whatever you choose, me and my team will do the best. You will never sound selling or pushing on this because this is a strong recommendation. And that's something that you're most of the time, don't get away saying that whatever you choose, aap jo choose karenge acha hi hoga. It's very important that, many times, misconceptions happen in this particular type of multifocal or ATL practice. So it's very important at this point in time, the role of the counselors. The counselors play a very critical role in reducing your chair time, but also giving this, where the patients are able to openly ask many questions that he or she was not comfortable asking to you. So engage a very nice, smart counselor in your practice, and that's no shortcut. You ought to engage a good counselor in your practice for sure. Typical, how do you communicate a one-liner benefit of a multifocal package? And I've jotted down a few of them, and again, I'll read this out for you. Some of the best and the safest way to put this is number one, With the implant of this lens, you will find that, for 90 or 95% of your activities, you'll not need to wear spectacles. Next one happens to be, you could also say that, if you walk out of the house and you suddenly realize that you've forgotten your specs, even in this situations, you'll be able to manage the things well. Multifocal lenses are designed for active individuals like you because you're complementing them. And most of my patients who have received this implant, they have seen a wonderful change in their lifestyle, a one-liner with this. And then you could say, with the advent of the new technologies, you can now help you reduce the dependency on the glasses. Had you come to me a few years earlier, I would have not been able to offer the same thing for you. Dr. Abhijit Desai just mentioned about the halos and glares conversation. If that's something that you want to mention, as Dr. Vasada also said that first thing you should be mentioning about thing is not compare your that should be for the counselors the regime that do not compare the other eye until the bilateral implantation happens. Simple cards they would be happy to share with you. You can share with them. These are pictures. You can say that your journey of the halos and glares could be from here to here. This is what it could be like. But after 6 months, this is what it's going to be like. If they never notice it, they are very happy. If they notice it, they know that I was always told about it. Again, managing patient expectations, a simple summary card that you can design by yourself, which says that, this is what, which towards the end of this discussion, the counselors could, recap and say that this is what we decided, this is the lens, and this is what we're going to offer, and they sign up and move away. So that also helps by and large, in managing the expectations, and they know what they're getting versus an implant. A simple tool, again, is the biggest resource that you can have is doing your own patient testimonial videos. And normally, most of the times, you feel that you might have to give them a video, you might have to get a video guy, you have to plan and so on and so forth. I've seen several practitioners, doing this with a simple mobile phone. It's just about giving somebody the job that, every time you get a happy patient, ask those 3 very simple questions. And there are several softwares that are available, free applications which are available where you can do this by yourself. Make a collage out of it, put it in your OPD, put it in your website, and you will see a lot of patient footfalls coming out by the simplistic. It doesn't have to be flamboyant, but simplistic patient testimonials which comes out natural from the patients. One point that I want to quickly stress upon is the importance of the post-operative counseling or the wow factor. A patient will become will multiply only if your patient turn on to become an ambassador, if they go out and say this. And when do they become an ambassador? Because once they have that wow effect, yes. And it's very important, even after the session, after the surgery, after the session, that you spend some minutes with them discussing, and using a couple of tools and resources, very simplistic, which creates the wow factor. What really happens, and we did a little survey based on it, that when the surgery happens and the surgery is done, many of the patients felt, well, this is how it is supposed to be. What's the big deal about it? Even if they had a multifocal lens in their eyes. But then when you explain that this is what it was, versus this, like for example, a pre-operating evaluation sheet that you see at this point in your screen. Before the surgery, you make your patients actually, read a particular point, and you make them sign that this is what I'm able to read at this point in time. After the surgery, you open up and you again bring the same sheet and ask him or her to read, and they will see, and then they say that I'm able to read 2 lines extra. And you say you already signed up earlier, so this is what you've achieved. This is this new lens, you've already, and then they become much more happier as they move forward. Caregivers are the decision makers, as we know, so use relevant terminologies and and simulation packages that they understand much better, so then they're going to be helpful in that communication. 2 more pearls before I wind up is pricing. How do you price your multifocal? Well, keep your fee structure simple, and I'm going to talk in a minute what do I mean by a structure, of simple fee structure. Charge appropriately for your PCL package. And I've heard Dr. Vasavda speak many a times, and I love this, and I quote this many a times, that do not feel apologetic when you charge a particular multifocal lens, a particular price for a multifocal lens. Just charge that appropriately. Try this trick. Use the reverse package confirmation. And also, I'll just take 2 more minutes before I wind up. Use the reverse package communication. What I mean by reverse package is, normally you would say we have packages from 35,000 to, let's say, 90,000 rupees. Reverse it, reverse and try and say that, we have packages from 90,000 to 35,000, or multifocal is my best take, and the fallback option happens to be monofocal. And there are several other ways that you go. When I say simple fee structure, many times we have seen that they have a menu kind of a structure, Very simple fee structure is simple for patient to understand. Surgery type, lens type. In lens type, you have a standard lens and a lifestyle lens. If you have astigmatism, you have toric, else you have PCIOs. There has been several studies that have come out, saying that if you in these days, if you give the EMI option to a patient, they tend to move to the next package very easily. There's interest-free EMI option. The simple thing that you need to do is just call up your banker, and they'll connect you with the retail banking division, and they'll be happy to give you this offer. And and they do the marketing themselves. And you'll see that a patient who would have never gone on the other side suddenly has decided to go for a multifocal package. And the last, before I wind up, is now no patient will be in a state of mind to listen to flags or multifocal if they are irritated. Hence, a patient experience, a good patient experience, is very critical, important, and that's also something that you would want to look into going forward. So, in summary, what I would say that three things that I would want to summarize: inform your patients completely about this. Recommend wholeheartedly, as I said, and build ambassadors for your practice and for the particular package. And you'll see much more patients. You'll be able to reach out to much more patients with these wonderful technologies that are available today. Thank you so much for this. Thanks for your time.
Thank you, Saurav. This is a very useful, many tips that you shared with us for many of our colleagues and of us that we will try to consider adopting. But the key is really to be kind of ethical about. Our aim is not to promote a particular package or IOL just to earn more money or build up the practice, but to help our patients. So understanding the patients, and you brought it out very well by the questionnaires and giving a lot of time, will really help us and satisfy our own self, and also secondarily will build up your practice, and you will be able to do that. So Arup and Michael, any comments on how you kind of practice through your team or yourself that will help the patients to benefit from these technologies of the IOL?
I thought that was Sharauf, I thought that was a great talk. Really nailed some of the issues. I have just two things. I think if an ophthalmologist wants to get into presbyopia IOLs, then they should have first made sure that they deal with astigmatism very well. If you can't nail astigmatism, you're not going to do well with trifocal lenses. And so you have to spend the time to get your astigmatism management right. Otherwise, there's no point. So that's my first just observation to people who might be thinking they'll adopt trifocals or presbyopia IOLs. The second, the practical thing that we do, and you did allude to it, it's communication. And so I've made a series of videos which are pre-consultation. And so 3 days before the consultation day itself, they get sent a text and they click on the link, and it's a video of me talking to them about what to expect at the consultation. And at that early stage, I start to talk about IOL choices as well. And so and they've seen me, and they have a connection with me.
Wonderful, yeah.
That's in addition to the staff and all those sort of things. And they get a series of different videos after the consultation. So 2 days after the consultation, they get another one of a different sort, saying, hope they're happy with the consultation. These are the issues which might have come up. And so it's a series of videos which takes them through the whole process, including after surgery. And we found that a really sort of helpful way to connect and get the conversation started.
Wonderful, wonderful. That's a very good idea. Arup, do you any other suggestions to adapt these?
So far, we don't have. We are not actually. We have a lot of patients to operate, and all that time there is a lot of rush in the. We have a little time to explain, but definitely those who shows some interest in the counseling room, they send back to us, and we explain that what they can expect and will benefited from the PanOptix side. So far we will do this, but we will promoting now we're planning to promote our PCIOL practice in near future, and hopefully you can follow tips, as Saurabh told us.
Okay. All right. Then now we move on to the very important talk, a newer technology, information and knowledge. And we are all looking forward for it. Michael, please go ahead.
Okay, thanks, Ali. And it is a pleasure to be here. Thank you to the Indian Society and thank you to Alcon for putting this symposium on. My talk is on understanding the Vivity lens, what they're calling the X-wave technology, and I'll talk a little bit about how the lens works and how it's impacted my practice and a few small number of cases. I'm a consultant to Alcon and to Carl Zeiss. I won't labour this. If you've been, Arup spoke at length about the change in presbyopia lens technology over the years. And I would just say that this is different. This is, in my view, not a multifocal, it's not an EDOF, it is a different lens. It uses these two transition elements, which I'll go into, to create an advanced and a delayed wavefront to give a continuous extended focal range. And it has full light utilization, so therefore a monofocal visual disturbance profile. There is no light splitting, whereas any multifocal or trifocal has to split light in some way to perform its task. But this does not occur with this lens. And so the monofocal visual disturbance profile is real. The downside of this lens is that you will not get true spectacle independence. It's like this, and I've actually put the US patent number there. You can go and look into that patent via Google Patents and dig into the detail of how the lens works. It was patented in May 2018. But there are two transition elements which stretch and shift the wavefront. It's a simultaneous action, delivers a continuous extended focal range. And on the left-hand side, you see this little 1 micron raised area, and this area is 2.2 millimeters, and that's raised 1 micron. And there's another slide which shows that a little bit better. If you look with the naked eye, a Vivity looks exactly like a Acrosoft. No difference. It handles the same way. You can't tell them apart. This is a Vivity being placed by me using an automated injector. It behaves just as we're familiar with an Acrosoft. You see here, though, this is at the end of the procedure. You just see the little ring there centrally, and then I move the light. That's the same eye, like 10 seconds later, and then you can't see it. So you have to get the transillumination right in order to actually see that this is a Vivity lens, because that lens right now is a Vivity, but you couldn't tell from that angle. But my point is that it behaves exactly like a lens that you're familiar with. And that's 1 week post-op, and you can just see in the pupil there, the little edge of the 2.2 millimeter ring, the pupil's constricted under the operating microscope. I just flicked over to that eye as I was doing the second eye. And you can see that just as you can see it on the slit lamp, but you can't see it with the naked eye. So the patient or a patient's relative can't see this as a different lens. If you magnify it up, you will see that how this lens works. There is this 2.2 millimeter central zone, which is its distinguishing feature. And that surface transition element, that the 1 micron high ridge or plateau, stretches the wavefront, and then the 2.2 millimeter region centrally with its small curvature change across that central 2.2 millimeter range shifts the wavefront. And so by doing that, you get to use all the available energy. It's not 88%, it's 100%, or as much as a lens can give 100%, as a monofocal does. I find this a really helpful slide. On the top, this is like a equivalent of a modulation transfer function, but the monofocal has a excellent light intensity distribution at distance, but it fades off at intermediate and near, as we know. The AT Lara, the Zeiss lens, that was my go-to EDOF lens, and I still use it. I think it's a really good lens, has very clear vision, but it does have some parts because it's effectively a multifocal lens where the light is missing in effect or degraded. Whereas the Vivity, which is the bottom, shows really a monofocal profile in terms of the intensity of light, but it continues past the intermediate towards the near. So up until recently, a traditional monofocal gave good distance, we know that, but poor intermediate and near. A modern trifocal like the Panoptix gave the best chance of true freedom from glasses at all ranges, and in my view still does, but at some cost, modest costs in quality of vision, because all multi and all trifocal lenses have to split light. And those EDOF lenses are the in-betweeners, where you're not quite good enough for near, but you get some photic phenomenon. So with Vivity, those options do expand. It extends the range, but does retain good, clear optics. It also does offer a seamless transition, and this was a surprise to me. The patients don't have to hunt for the correct focus point. It's a really nice transition seamlessly from distance to intermediate and a little bit into near if you offer some mini monovision. So you have a choice, and this has made my patient conversation quite easy these days. Choice one, aim for plano in both eyes. That gives a patient good unaided distance and intermediate vision, but they will wear readers at about a +1 level. Simple, a lot of people will opt for that option. Choice two is a slight offset in the non-dominant eye. And by that, I mean a -0.5 to 0.75 in the dominant eye. That actually gives quite a reasonable chance of freedom from reading glasses, but not for everybody and not as much as a trifocal, so you can't promise it. But it does give you an ability to fudge the end point for a patient who likes a little more spectacle independence, but still does not want photic phenomenon. And this is not monovision. This is not one eye doing one thing. Both eyes are working together, and the extended range of the Vivity does offer this visual summation. It's a very natural type of vision. And obviously choice three, which I won't go into this talk, is if you want spectacle independence, that is the most important thing to you, then really it comes down to a Panoptix. Now I'm indebted to Francesco Cronius, who many of you would know, a terrific Italian doctor from Milan, for this slide. And what it shows is the good and bad of Vivity. Now this is where he's got 20 eyes, bilaterally implanted, plano in one eye, -0.5 in the non-dominant eye. And this is their degree of spectacle independence. The black areas are where they're not free of glasses. And so if you see they're reading in the dark, about 30% of patients have to wear glasses. And that is a reflection of this lens. With mini monovision, you'll do great at distance, at intermediate, and into the near range, but in poor quality light or for prolonged reading, you are going to need some help. So you can't overpromise with this lens. But remember, there are no photic phenomena. And that's what makes this lens different for patients and for ophthalmologists. The quality of vision is equivalent to a monofocal. The photic phenomena are the same as a monofocal. That's in the FDA data. It's in the Vivity registry that's being done around the world. And that's certainly true in 18 months of practice with this lens that I've managed to have. There are no visual gaps, it's seamless, and a slight myopic offset is available to you to give a little more independence. And in my experience, that's the first time a lens has been able to give all of the above. So 3 cases. This was one of my first cases back in December 2019. And I was trying to work out, I didn't quite believe the data. I'm old enough to be suspicious about data sometimes. So I put a Clarion in the left eye, the dominant eye, and a Vivity in the right eye, aiming for -0.75. He was 63, had some cortical cataract. And I got him just right. And I'm just going to dwell on this slide for a moment because I got him right. The Clarion eye, 6.4.5 unaided, perfect distance vision as planned. In the right eye, we got him to -0.75. That's great. And he corrected up to 6.5. But that's how this left eye is the Clarion, so a monofocal lens. At intermediate, at 66 centimeters, he's reading N10. At near, he's reading N12. That's what a monofocal does. The Vivity at minus 0.75 is a little forgiving because he's seeing an easy 6, 7.5 because there is a little bit of give in this lens for small refractive errors. At intermediate, he's reading N5. You'd say, well, okay, I can get that with a monofocal with minus 0.75. And near, he's minus 0.75. Now, what the lens is doing, it's giving you, he's minus 0.75, but it's giving you about a diopter or a diopter and a quarter. So he's reading it near the equivalent of a -2. And so that is how this lens works. This patient allowed me to move on and be a bit more aggressive. And so this is a second case. This is a patient with keratoconus. Not too bad. That's the topography as you see there. I would never, in the old days, put anything other than a monofocal or a monofocal toric sometimes in that patient. I would never have put a EDOF or a trifocal. But I put a Vivity in the left eye, and he's great. He's 6, 7.5 unaided, corrects with a small refraction to 6.6. Very happy with the quality of his vision. His intermediate and near is not perfect, but it's a little better than he would have got with a monofocal. But importantly, a compromised cornea and a multifocal IOL give you 2 hits against visual quality, 2 chances to have increased aberrations. Whereas here is a compromised cornea, but a lens which is behaving like a monofocal in terms of quality of vision and photic phenomenon. So you can put it in compromised eyes, and obviously that applies to a lot of post-refractive eyes as well, post-LASIK eyes. Last case, bilateral cataract, more dense cataract, an older patient at 73, and got an aim for plano, was a little bit more minus in the right eye, really happy. And sometimes you see this patient is truly free of glasses for everything, slightly smaller pupils than average, and that does tend to help. But what I want to just show you is the QVID quality of vision validated questionnaire. Preoperative, this patient had quite dense cataracts, had plenty of halos and glare and lousy vision, and postoperatively had 0 quality of vision issues. Now that's rare to see 0 even in a monofocal patient where you've got them plano. So I actually thought, oh, they made a mistake. So I got them to retest the patient. No, 0. And this patient, I just put that one up to demonstrate. Now some patients with a monofocal and a Vivity will get some occasional symptoms, but they're equivalent. So with this lens, you do not have to be worried that you're going to induce photic phenomenon. You have a lens which does all these things, the monofocal profile, but the added advantage of adding in a diopter or a diopter and a quarter of equivalent near and intermediate effect. And this lens, in my experience, after 18 months of use, has now become effectively my default lens. I have to find a reason not to use it. And sometimes I do use a monofocal, sometimes I do use a panoptics, but I have to find a reason not to use this lens rather than to have to find a reason to use this lens. So it's my go-to lens these days. So thank you very much for having me as part of this symposium.
Thank you, Michael. Very, very, very impressive information. And I think we would like to put our hands on these lenses once Alcon rolls out here in India. But I have some questions here for all of us. Just let me get to that. And this reflects the question of a survey published in iWorld recently by APA-CRS, where a survey was done for ophthalmologists. And about 90 or so ophthalmologists, or so many ophthalmologists, were given the survey and what kind of IOL they would choose. 90% of them say they would go for quality of vision rather than freedom of lenses. And those who put more than 50 patients with trifocal lenses, of these, 40% say they would go for panoptic lenses. So here is a question from an ophthalmologist in India here, a 62-year-old ophthalmologist working on anti-segment surgeries and want to work more. He's very energetic and he wants to continue now, and has a mild cortical cataracts in both eyes. And he finds now difficult in driving, as you showed the preoperative halos there. What kind of IOL would you recommend to me, sir? That's the question to the panelists and all of us. So, Michael, an ophthalmologist active and wants to remain active with bilateral cataracts.
Yeah. Look, I think it depends. The patient has to decide what matters most to them, but I think they should be reassured that with the PanOptix, they'll be able to continue to do ophthalmic microsurgery. That's not going to be that's not going to impair their clearness of vision. They will have some halos and they've got to accept that as part of the lens design, but I don't think they need to be scared of a PanOptix in terms of being able to do their work. That said, if they're that sort of personality, and some ophthalmologists are very obsessive personalities, they might just be happier with an aspheric monofocal lens in both eyes. I don't think an EDOF is much use. You either go all the way or stay with a monofocal in that setting. That'd be my advice.
Okay. So your choice would be the monofocal, safer bet if they are a little bit of worried or concerned, or consider PanOptic, because that won't hamper the function as a surgeon as well as in the routine of the light. So that was a useful tip. Thank you. Arup, what would you have advice?
So as he is an ophthalmic surgeon, he needs a very clean vision for distance. And I think I should opt him for monofocal lens. If it is other general surgeon or gynecologist or other surgeon, I'll definitely prefer PanOptix. But the most of the ophthalmic surgeon work under the microscope and need a very good vision for perform the surgery. I'll prefer monofocal lens for this one.
So you are worried, you have a feeling that PanOptix lens will not give a good vision through the operating microscope. That's your main concern.
Yes, that's a patient. You can PanOptix can the max 50 to 55% light for distance. It may need may hamper kind of vision through microscope.
I think I would definitely consider PanOptix, but we need to discuss with the ophthalmologist their other lifestyle. But as far as the surgeon is concerned, I'm very confident that the surgeon would be able to operate as well as he has with the PanOptic, because the distance quality is very good. If it is 10 with monofocal, it is 9 with PanOptix. So I think that's quite okay with the endoscopy or ophthalmic surgery. So I tend to agree with Michael.
Can I?
Yeah, please go ahead.
The best part about being an
Abhijit, you heard the
person,
question, no? This is
yeah.
Very good.
So as an ophthalmologist, we have the luxury of increasing our light settings on the microscope. Okay, so from my point of view, even if there's a PanOptix or a multifocal in that eye, it's really not going to matter much, because your settings are all set and they can be changed. So automatically the quality of vision will not be hampered irrespective of having a PanOptix in the eye.
No, Abhijit, it's not the amount of light. It's not the dim light or the bright light that really is critical. It's good that we can increase illumination, but from a microscope, the quality is important, and the quality is good enough.
Is good enough.
PanOptix. Michael, any final comments?
Yes, Arup, I would have agreed with you a couple of years ago, and I changed my mind when one of the busiest cataract surgeons in Australia, a very sensible guy, has trifocal lenses in both eyes, and he says it is just as good as it was when he was 35 and 40 in terms of the clearness of vision. So I don't think you need to be worried about the clearness of vision down an operating microscope with a PanOptix. I think that this surgeon convinced me. It's a series of one, but he was a very discerning person, and he was not kidding. He's gone back to his surgical practice and he's one of the busiest in the country.
Very good. So having understood eye surgeons are not necessarily kind of no for panoptic. The question here is by somebody, do you feel any limitation of using panoptics with specific professionals like night drivers, the pilots, and the people who are to face the films and the headlights on their faces, or a sports person in the night arena? Do you feel it's an sort of contraindication for panoptics? Each of you, please.
Well, in Australia, we're not allowed to place, our aviation regulatory authority will not allow any form of multi-trifocal lens. So that's a no for patients. I don't think they're right, but I do think there are, I'm not worried about an ophthalmologist getting a panoptics, but I do worry about a patient who's has a night vision job where the illumination is poor. I think their clearness, their quality of vision is compromised slightly in a way that I would not put it in that sort of person.
Yeah, I think we learned that hard way with 2.5 ad restore, that they really had to have an increased illumination for anything in the dim light. So I think the illumination which you and Abhijit brought out is important in these night activities. Any other thing, Abhijit?
So I have a personal experience with my wife. So my wife had bilateral panoptics. So even now in the routine driving on the highway, she doesn't have any issues. So the issue comes up when it's pitch dark and there is like just a bike ahead. So then there's a problem of judgment, because that she would see just as a halo and glare about there, and then there is no clarity there. So there are certain scenarios in which I would prefer that the person wouldn't drive, and that would be one of the pitch dark places. So that's why I said, if it's a rural area wherein there are no street lamps, yes, that would be a thing I would be concerned about.
So I think prolonged night driving, or in areas where there is nothing around, you need to be careful.
Yeah.
Arup, any comments on it?
Sir, yeah.
Any contraindication for panoptics?
Yeah, I have a friend in New Orleans. He is my age, and he used to drive a long drive go for long drives. Even he do the lot of line driving, and he recently implanted a panoptics both his eye, and he is quite happy. I don't know. I'm learning how to use a panoptics in night driver. But in my opinion, yes, Abhijit said the pitch dark condition, this may create problems. So it is better to avoid this type of patient. So love to drive more in the night.
I think night illumination is very important, the light illumination. I had implanted a 2.5 restore both eyes in a marketing guy who had to go in different offices, different people, and some offices that are very dim light. And he was very embarrassed to shine his light on the mobile. So I think any activity which is prolonged in a dim light conditions, we need to be careful with the panoptic as well. All right, so I think I would value in 1 or 2 sentences, final comments on the panoptics. Michael, we have 2 minutes for 3 of you.
Oh, okay, well, it's the go-to lens if you want to be out of glasses, but make sure you've spoken to them ahead of time, make sure you get everything right. And the last thing is we do a 6-week post-op exit. So we make sure we don't just discharge the patient, we have a conversation. I don't, but the optometrist does. Have we met your expectations? Are you happy? And they have to leave the practice happy, not unhappy, but they've got to be happy. And sometimes that means tidying up their tear film, doing a YAG capsulotomy, doing some PRK, but they leave happy at the exit visit.
Very useful tip. Abhijit?
My go-to lens, obviously, and my sincere request is to correct the astigmatism.
Okay.
So that's very important.
Thank you.
Yes, the astigmatism is a very important issue to address, and I think Nowadays, we have a total keratometry value. But if anyone can
Okay.
have
Got it.
access to this, what is the TK value for?
Got it, Aruk. Thank you. Thank you so much. I think we have come to the very interesting session today, and we feel that we need to re-energize and enhance our presbyopia correcting IOLs practice so that our patients benefit and improve their lifestyle. So thank you so very much for your patient hearing. Thank you all. Thank you.
Thank you, sir. Have a good day, all of you.
What a fantastic presentation by all our eminent speakers, and an excellent moderation by Dr. Abhay. So ladies and gentlemen, with this, we come to the end of this session. So ladies and gentlemen, since we are a one big happy family and we have completed the session on time, let's hear it for all of us. I would request all of you to please unmute your lines, switch on the camera, and let's give a huge round of applause to all the speakers and to our moderator for the fantastic session.
Okay.
So can we have everyone? We'll take a screenshot of this session.
Thank you.
All right. So let's hear it for everyone.
Thank you.
3 cheers for all.
Thank you. Thank you.
Thank you.
Amazing. Great. All right, ladies and gentlemen. So this session is closed now.